Good morning. This is Kim De Silva from Language of Relationships, and welcome to Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app and the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Good morning again, and help me to welcome our guest today, Karin Freeland. Now, I can tell you a whole lot about Karin. She's going to tell you about herself as well. But she is a women's life coach. She is an author of two books, but we're actually focusing on one, right? On one today. And she is a podcast host. Now, Karin helps women to, she says, reinvent themselves, but it goes so far beyond that, because it's not just about reinventing yourself. It's also about living that life that you want, living that life that you want to create, living your best life. So, Karin, we're also going to be touching on your story with how you transitioned out of corporate life. So, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm in the mood. We got the good music going on at the beginning. I was ready to hit the dance floor.
It is very catchy. We have to thank our daughter for that one as well. Um, all right, so I think, okay, given the time of our show, and and if you're listening to this live, or if you're on the replay, perhaps you do have a corporate life, and you may want to transition either within that role you currently have, or maybe you're just done with it and you want to get out of it, but you can't see any way around or out. Well, that's what Karin helps with. So, Karin, what do you help ladies with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just a quick intro for myself. I'm what I call a recovered corporate workaholic. So, I spent 15 years in the corporate world chasing paychecks and titles, trying to get the next dopamine hit, thinking that every time I got that next job, suddenly then I was going to be happy. Then I was going to be fulfilled. Then I was going to actually love my life. And sure, for the first 6 months in a new job, I was always really energized. I felt another sense of purpose. I got refocused. And then it all crumbled again. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Is this really what I was put on earth to do? And it wasn't until I had a very strong midlife crisis. I don't know what else to call it. I was pretty much rock bottom. We'd had a couple of deaths in the family. And I really started questioning even more, what am I doing with my life? It's so short. It's a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of eternity. And am I using myself to my biggest, fullest potential? And I realized that I wasn't. And so now I needed to set out on this journey to figure out, well, how do I design a life that I love? What do I even love? I forgot how to dream. Like, what are my dreams even at this point? Because all I had been focused on was my corporate career. And so went through this whole transformation, decided to write some books, become a life coach. And in the process of all that, I realized I have a blueprint. I have something that I can give to other women who are feeling stuck and frustrated and hopeless and all the things that I had been feeling. And I can help them redesign their life, reimagine their careers, and just reach their fullest potential that I believe everybody was given. Every single one of us has a unique reason that we are here, that we are destined to fulfill. And so I want to help more people reach that potential.
Exactly. Beautiful. Now, we've talked many times about how you got to that point of transitioning out of corporate life, because you were very successful in your corporate life. I mean, like, okay, I mean, yes, you mentioned chasing paycheck to paycheck, but what it was going fairly well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was chief of staff for a $13 billion tech company. I was living in that C-suite life. I was making great money. I had the Benz in the driveway, the two kids, the happy, let's use air quotes there for a second, happy marriage, right? Like, on paper, my life looked A++, right? The high achiever in me was like, I'm ticking all the boxes. I'm doing all the right things. And yet there was still this gaping hole in my soul that was like, this isn't it. There's something missing. I always felt discontent.
Yeah.
That was
Exactly.
hard for me because my husband was the opposite. He could not have been more content with life. And it was really and it was fascinating to me. I'm like, "What do you mean you don't want more? You don't want something different? You're just good with this?" And I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "Well, how do I get good with what I have?" But he had this beautiful mission, and I remember one night we were sitting down talking about life and all the deep things, and he was like, "Yeah, my mission is to raise our boys to be upstanding citizens and to give back and to be better off than we were." And he had this like whole legacy plan, and I'm like, I don't have a mission. I don't know why I'm here. And it was that missing link for me that just kept me in that stuck, frustrated mindset. And
Yeah.
so it was really like I knew I needed to crack that code, you know what I mean, to
Right.
make that next move forward.
Mhm.
And so if people are feeling like, well, I don't know what my mission is, dude, that's a great place to start. Discover what could your mission be? Because you don't know day one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you had asked me back then, well, what's your mission? It wasn't like I walked out of that discussion with my husband. I was like, oh, I know. I want to write 2 books. I want to become a podcast host. I want to, I didn't know that. I had to explore it and figure that out.
Exactly. Okay. So for the lady who is sitting there right now, unsure if this is the life she wants, um, what a so you're not saying the key is to leave corporate. You're saying for some of us, staying in that life, but shaping it in a different way that works for us is
Could
really
be. It could be, right? And it's really specific to each woman and what she desires. I
yeah.
have lots of clients that I work with, and they're like, Karen, I actually love my job. It's
Great.
just that I'm in my job 24/7 and I don't get to enjoy all the other great things that life has. I'm like, great. Let's work on setting boundaries. Let's work on, finding hobbies and maybe volunteerism and another way to give back to the community would give you that sense of fulfillment and round out your life that you don't feel you have right now. And then some women are going to do what I did, which is you're going to move from one corporate job to a different one and realize, oh, no, no, it's not the job. It's not the company, right? Because I went from tech, I went to energy, and it's still within marketing, but I learned a whole
Mhm.
different industry. And I thought, well, surely I'll get over here, smaller company, things are different. This is going to be great. And again, the honeymoon period ended after 6 months, and I was right back where I started. So sometimes what we need to do is make that change and experience that first initial pivot so that we can get on to the bigger pivot. Because I was not ready back
Right.
in 2017 when I first moved from tech to energy to
Right.
fully go out on my own. I didn't have the confidence. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have some of the tools and things that I needed to be able to
Mhm.
be as successful as I am today.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. So now we're not really jumping all over the place, but in a little way we are, because what I want for our viewers to really grasp is, this journey, this process, because as you said, this is not a straight line. This need to change, this need to reinvent yourself, it takes many twists and turns. So kind of in between this now, Karen mentioned she has 2 boys, she's married. So let's revisit those air quotes we had over happily married.
Great. Sorry, babe, if you're watching, but he knows. It's okay.
He knows he
So
was there.
he does. Yeah. And it ebbed and flowed, right? When I was in the height of my chief of staff role,
Yeah.
it was so rocky. I mean, both of us just drank so much to cope, right? I was drinking my specialty was vodka and coffee because I needed, yeah, right, super healthy. I needed the coffee to stay up at night and get this mountain of work that I felt pressured to get done. But I needed the vodka, I thought, because I needed to take the edge off and
Right,
to decompress me. It
right.
would totally canceled each other out. I don't think it did anything for me, but it made somehow that was my
It
coping
made sense
mechanism,
to
right?
you, yes.
It made sense to me at the time.
Wow.
And then he would be drinking because he's like, I just got to power through. She's on her laptop and her phone and 18 other devices working until midnight. So I just have to power through all the housework, all the laundry, all the kids' homework, all the everything else he had to manage, dinners, all that stuff. and he was fabulous at it. And then he would go to bed and I'd still be up working. And it was like we were just two people almost in like a business transaction. Okay, you're going to handle this. I'm going to handle this. Great. Good night. Have a good one. We'll see you again on Sunday, maybe, or Saturday, And it took such a toll on both of us, but neither of us knew how to change or how to get out of that in the moment, And I remember begging him, like, will you please just be a stay-at-home dad? We just don't work anymore. This would be so much easier on us. And yet that wasn't his purpose. That wasn't his desire and his dream. And so, we struggled with that for a while. Like, how do we make both of our dreams a reality?
Exactly. And okay. And so what you're describing there is a situation that, is almost reversed for many households. But this is the reality of sometimes operating in this very high stress zone while still trying to manage a family. And the reality is, and as you know now, looking back, his staying home wouldn't have helped. You weren't working any less.
Nope.
You weren't going to suddenly find 10 minutes during your day to stop and say, well, let's have a cup of coffee together.
Right. Oh no, that never would have occurred to me. And it was really, COVID obviously was terrible, but there were so many little blessings for us because it was during that COVID time that we started to get really intentional about our life. I was still in energy. I hadn't left corporate yet, but I was starting to plan it. Right. And we would sit down every night and just have tea together for like an hour and no TV. We'd already cut cable. We don't have any streaming services. So that was a big thing in our reinvention and redesigning our life was we didn't want to have TV or any media anymore coming in. And so we had no choice but to sit down and connect with each other because there was nothing other than reading really to do. Right. And it was so beautiful for us to get back on the same page about what we want our family to live like, what we want our careers to be, how we can support each other in those dreams and just redesign our relationship.
All right. So you said that he was very supportive from the point of view of, doing the stuff at home that needed to be done to have an effective home. But in terms of like you leaving your job, I mean, that's a pretty major decision. Most of us, if we're used to a 2-income household, transitioning out of that is terrifying.
Yep.
So how did you guys manage to navigate those conversations, given that this was a time where maybe communication wasn't at its best?
Yeah. And I love how you said, how did you navigate those conversations? Because that's the key. You have to actually have the conversations.
And so it's not a one-off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's a lot of the advice that I give to my clients when I'm working with them and they have to deliver this kind of information or they want to start having these conversations is, you need to have the right time and the right location. So, my husband is an electrician. He is a very physical job. So the time for me to have these conversations is not when he walks in the door from work. He's hungry. He's tired. Like this, he can't think about Karin wants to now start a business or Karin wants to do this or do that. That's too much. So it's about finding the right setting and the right timing to say, hey, I want to talk to you later about something. Can we carve out 40 minutes or whatever amount of time to just sit down and no phones, right? And just have a conversation with each other. And, he's always receptive to that. Yeah, sure. No problem. Or maybe it's after their workout or whatever they need to do to just kind of be in a space and be calm and receive the information that you're going to share.
Exactly. And that is such a vital piece of information. And this is not just about this particular situation where you want to, change your professional life. This is in general. There's something that, as a couple you need to address. Exactly. It's not just how you say it. It's not just what you say. It's also when. Choosing the time can actually solve half of your battles.
Yeah. And where? Because sometimes home isn't the best place or, positioning myself across from him because it feels like I'm drilling him or I'm like staring at him. We sometimes have our best conversations in car rides because we're side by side. And so we're kind of positioned as a team and we're looking out at the road and we can kind of glance at each other, but it's not this pressure to instantly respond or have the right answer. And so I find that has helped us a lot to communicate more effectively.
Yes, that's actually a piece of advice and that I give as well, and because there's actually some science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So like what some of the wiring that we have as sometimes for women, it's very important to have that eye contact to
Yeah.
feel that sense of connection and being seen and heard and understood. But for men, sometimes that eye contact, particularly if this is a stressful conversation, it's very confrontational, so it gets their cortisol levels up.
Yeah.
And they because they get into that fight or flight mode, so those face-to-face conversations sometimes don't work very well. And and same thing as you, Karen, I've noticed that some of my best conversations with my husband are when we are not facing each other. But I love how you describe that sense of being in a car ride, both of you side by side as a team looking out. And I also just want to mention too, for those of you who have sons, this also works really well with them. I have my gosh. You try sitting down with a teenage boy and watching them straight in their face. It's not going to work.
No, not at all. And I wanted to just go back to the money piece a little bit because that was probably our biggest struggle. And so there's three things that I always help my clients with, and it's the money, the mindset, the mission.
Right.
So when you are thinking about leaving corporate, you have got to make sure that you start to work out your money mindset, the money issues, your budgeting, what this is going to look like. Because for most of us, at least in the beginning, you are going to be taking a pay cut if you are leaving and starting a business and doing something else, right? But for me, that was something that I was able to come to terms with rather quickly with the right kind of planning. So I always recommend that you visit with a financial planner or advisor or someone who can give you actual investment advice, look at your portfolio, see where you're at, project out when you can retire. Because we have a lot of stories in our head. We tell ourselves we don't have enough money. We need to work harder. We need to get this. We need to get that. And if we don't stop and pause and check and go, but what do I need? What do I want? I had someone once say, but Karin, these are your money making years. You got kids to put through college. And what if you want a second home? And I was like, a freaking second home? I don't want to clean the one I have. I don't need a second home. I don't want a second home. Now, if that's your desire, that's fine. As long as it's your desire and not the desire that society keeps telling you is important. Right? Society told me cars was important. Big homes were important. Salvatore Ferragamo shoes were important. Purses were important, right? All these things. And I kept getting them and buying them and going, but I'm not actually any happier. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, I don't actually need to spend this much money on, because I track all my spending on, shopping or this or that. I can divert some of those funds for other things. Do my kids need to still play hockey? They were playing hockey at the time. It's one of the most expensive sports that your kids can play. And we had to take a look at that. Did we still want to even live in New Jersey? And the answer for us was no. We moved to South Carolina, right? So we had to make some big decisions, but we made them as a team. We made them together because we understood the mission, right? Remember I said the money, the mindset, the mission. And so the mission is, what are we creating? What are we moving towards?
Exactly.
And once we understood the life that we wanted to create for our kids, it made it very easy to sell our place in New Jersey and come to Greenville. We didn't feel like we were sacrificing anything. We didn't feel like we were missing out on anything because we were so excited for what we were running towards.
Exactly. Beautiful. And that is very key. That idea of what you are running towards as opposed to what you're running from, because when there's all that emphasis on I need to get out, you're not focusing on where you're going. So then, exactly. Just before we go into our next question, which is also related, I just want to say hi to Pau, who's joining us today. So, hola, Pau.
Yeah, and she said I can relate, and I mean, it's great to hear that you can relate to these things, but we also were like, okay, we don't want you to relate for too long. We want you to move on to the next phase.
Okay, all right. So as we are getting to that area where we can move on to the next phase, now we talked about the money, which I suspect we're still going to come back to it, right? And that's one of the conversations that you need to have, but not just conversation. You actually need to start thinking about it and figuring out where you want to be.
Yeah. And have those check-ins. Remember, so we talked about conversations. We're not having one conversation and calling it a day. My husband and I do monthly budget check-ins. We sit down and we go through our entire finances once a month. We know exactly how much is coming in, exactly how much is going out, how much we have in our savings, how much our 401k has grown, right? Like, we're in it, because so many people, they're like, well, if I don't look at it, then it's not happening. It's not real. I don't have to worry about it. And
Yeah,
it's the exact opposite.
oh my gosh, those conversations are so key. I may need some tips on having those conversations.
Okay, I got you.
So, um, okay, so for the ladies who come to you, right, or even just, again, watching, what would you say are the most common struggles that they are facing when it's time to leave the corporate world? And we touched on the money, and if that's one, if we have to go back there again, fine. But what are the struggles when they're right, like, I want to leave, Karin, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big one, right? Is the money, it's the golden handcuffs. A lot of the women that I work with are high achieving women, high 6 and 7 figures, right? So they have long-term incentives. They have things like, well, if I stay until this time, I get $150,000. It's not just like, oh, I want to stay for my $12,000 bonus next March. There's big dollars at stake.
Yeah.
So it really has to go so much deeper in shifting the mindset around money, and that it's just a tool, and at some point enough is enough, and like, what do you really need this money for?
Exactly.
And so understanding that piece is really critical for women to overcome that struggle. For a lot of women, suddenly they're not the breadwinner anymore, and now they've got to reassociate their worth and their value with something other than a paycheck, other than a title. And that is probably one of the hardest pills to swallow. That and money, they kind of go hand in hand in some ways, but they're right up there. And
it's part of their identity. It's like, this is what I've done for so long. This is how I've defined myself for so long.
Yes. And so, but that is the biggest thing to understand, is that it's actually not your identity. You are no more valuable of a person as a human being than you are if you were working at McDonald's. Okay, like, we all have, and I don't know if you're spiritual, faith-based, but like, we all have an inherent worth from our creator, regardless of our profession, regardless of how much money we make. We all have value and worth. And so that is probably the biggest mindset shift that people need to go through in order to really get comfortable. And one of the things that's been so beautiful, because I was the breadwinner, in this shift, is that I've now been able to lean into this other way for my husband to care for me. And he's been able to take on this other role. And I want to be really explicit when I say care for me. I'm not like, oh, can I go get a mani this week? Or can I have this? Can you buy me this? I still pay for all my stuff. My business is profitable. I don't ask him for money, but when we go out to dinner, it's not me who's throwing out the credit card. It's him. He gets to do this now. And so it's been a really awesome dynamic shift for us, and a great way for me to also experience being on the other side and getting to be provided for and taken care of and loved in that way.
Exactly. We're having this conversation, and I have two close friends who have gone through something similar, whether it was changes within their corporate jobs, or thinking of leaving altogether. And this has been an issue for them. It's like, how do I not have my own? Well, they would have their own money, but that sense of my salary. Yes, we have shared expenses, but that idea of, to me, what is a necessity, to him, what's a necessity. So, I remember my friend said, quite frankly, my trips to Sephora are not, they're not optional.
Right. Yeah. And that's okay, right? But then you're making those plans when you are sitting down and doing your budget and saying, okay, I'm leaving corporate. What do I actually need every month? How much do I need? What expenses are non-negotiable? And if that's Sephora, for me, it's Botox. I'm like, I'm not going without my Botox. Hell's the no. Priorities.
Exactly.
I gotta be on camera. I gotta look good. But but the other things, like I said, like with the clothes and stuff, I don't feel the need to go out and spend the kind of money that I used to spend on clothes, because I also want to be charitable. And so I have a charity goal, and I encourage my clients to create charity goals. So just because we're leaving corporate doesn't mean we suddenly don't have money to be generous and to be charitable to others. That's a huge piece also of how we have impact in this world and how we give back. So that sometimes blows people's mind a little bit. They're like, wait, you left your corporate job and you're not in this scarcity mindset, you're still giving? And I'm like, yes, because we understand the mission. And that's one of the challenges that a lot of women have is like, okay, well, if I'm not doing this, if I'm not this person anymore, who am I? And they forgot what their dreams are and their aspirations are.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't know the mission, then it's really hard for us to get excited about that stuff. I had one woman, she's like, I really want to go into teaching. She was an had fine art background. She had been in, very high profile magazines and publishing companies and things in New York City. And she thought, I really just want to go be an art educator. But it was so hard for her to get over the fact that she would have summers off and that she wasn't going to be this like high-powered woman working 24/7. But once she did, it's been so exciting to watch her flourish and go through her master's and get a job in the New York City what is it? I don't know, the school system, whatever. And so like it just DOE, thank you. I'm like, it's DO something.
Yeah.
And so it's been so amazing to see her just step into that purpose that she was created for and to get to share her love of art with someone else. So, yes, it's not necessarily leaving corporate and starting your own business, but it is just totally shifting industries and doing something completely different.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's say I've taken the decision. I'm ready to leave.
Yeah.
I've started thinking about it. I've started planning what I'm moving towards. But okay, what are my steps?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And I highly advise that you start planning this process before you leave. So 6 to 12 months is a good time. We don't all have that, right? Some of you are going to get layoffs. You're going through a merger and acquisition. Your position gets eliminated. Whatever, things are going to happen. But the sooner you can start planning, obviously, the better. Many of the steps are in Grab Life by the Dreams, which is my book that I wrote, The Essential Guide to Getting Unstuck and Living Your Purpose. And this is my blueprint, right? These are the exact steps that myself and my clients have taken. But the first one is always going to be starting with turning inward. And what that means is you're starting to put on your blinders, you're forgetting about what society's told you, and you're going inside to your soul to figure out, what do I want in this life? What do I want it to look like? What makes me tick? What excites me? What kind of passions do I have? And a lot of that is journaling, sitting quietly, having different experiences so that you can glean those little insights and start to put yourself back together. And that process can take a while, to really unearth some of the rocks and look deeply within to figure out what you really want. It's not one and done, right? So it takes some time. One of the ways that you can help yourself with that is by also having some more balance in your current career and starting to inject ways of happiness and joy from other areas. So that could be being very intentional with friends and starting to plan out, once a month, I'm going to go to coffee with a girlfriend, or I'm going to have a phone call with someone. Just you're getting that additional perspective. You're getting somebody to lift you up in this challenging time where you've got all these things going through your head. Going to networking groups, starting to just meet other people and hear what other people are doing. Having a hobby. For me, for so long, dance was missing in my life, that creative outlet, that thing that I had gone to college for. I was a dance major, and then I had let so much time go by without enjoying that hobby. And it looks different at 44. And sometimes it's actually me and my husband doing a ballroom class. And that's been an awesome way to bring my partner into my hobbies as well. So, you're building yourself back up. You're figuring out what you enjoy. You're setting those boundaries in your life. And then you never know where that next opportunity or that next thing is going to come from, that you just go, oh my gosh, that's it. Like I was talking to a health coach And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I love fitness. I love being in the gym. This sounds really cool. Maybe that's what I want to do. And I started to explore it. And then I heard about life coaching in the process. And I thought, no, that's what I want to do. Because I want to heal the whole woman. I want to do the whole thing, not
Yeah.
just the health piece.
Not
And so, but it wasn't until I started having these conversations and exploring other things that I found it brought me to the answer of what I really wanted to do.
exactly, exactly. And this is again why it's important to have, as you said, if it's possible, that 6 to 12 months. That way you're not just
Yeah.
fixated on leaving something. You
Right.
actually have something. And I mean, Karen, I don't know if we talked about this before, but I would say about 5, 6 years ago, that's exactly where I was. I was totally fed up with, teaching. I
Yep.
teach at the college level, and I was just so frustrated. And I was looking at anything to get out of it.
Hmm.
And that's where all of my energy was. I need to leave. I need to leave. I don't care what I do. Big mistake. I don't care what I do. Because guess what? When I went to my husband to have those conversations, he was just like, just get your butt back upstairs and do whatever. Go break some papers because we are not having this conversation.
Right.
We are not,
Yeah.
removing half of our household income.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I've had other clients who've come to me and in that initial discovery, they're in that same space. Like, I just got to get out of here. This place is so toxic. I'm so miserable.
Mhm.
And they're like, I don't even care. I'll go be a barista. And then,
You're
they'll sign up and like the first session, I'm like, all right, so what are we going to do to get you to be a barista? And they're like, no, I can't really do that. I'm like, yeah, I know you can't. I know you're not going to go be a barista. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not, they're just so frustrated that we literally were like, we'll do anything but this. And then that's how we end up in another soul sucking job that doesn't fulfill us.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I was doing. I remember
Mhm.
getting to that stage of like the resume all prepped. I'm there, searching all the different places. And, what was I doing? Really? I liked the flexibility of college teaching. The hours were my hours pretty much. But there I was applying to 9 to 5s.
Yeah, because we're so conditioned. We're so conditioned. And I've had clients do this too. And they're applying for these jobs that are more money, but they're more hours, longer commutes,
This is
less
it.
flexibility, more travel. And it's like, what are you doing? But it's self-sabotage. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. Self-sabotage out of fear.
Yeah.
And so we've got to address the fears. What are you really scared of? And then we can make a game plan to address those fears. I had one client, she was like, no, I think I just really do want to stay in corporate for 3 more years. I just need to make a move. She's like, I want to go to this company, but I'm afraid it's going to be a similar culture. I'm like, great. Well, how could you alleviate that? What are some things that you could do? And so we were able to brainstorm together, and she came up with talk to some people who were actually in that organization and get a feel for the culture. And then
Yeah.
once she did that, she realized it was completely different. She felt the confidence then to go ahead and apply and move forward with that opportunity. And she ended up getting it and super happy and loves her job, has way more flexibility. So
Exactly.
it's possible to find it, but you have to be intentional about what you want and address the fears that are coming up so that you can squash them and move forward.
Exactly. All right. So, I mean, we've mentioned partners a couple times now
Mhm.
in this whole process,
Yeah.
Um, so I guess this is a multifaceted question, and you
Okay.
can pull from your experience, from your partners, from your
Sure.
clients' experience. Okay, while we're talking about reinventing ourselves and getting in touch with our mission, if we are married or if we are in a long-term committed relationship, we also have a whole other person to consider.
Yeah.
And sometimes that other person can see things that we can't, because especially if we're in that zone of that fight or flight zone, we really have blinders on.
Yeah.
So, all right. How are our spouses or our partners affected? How can they actually support us if
Yeah.
it comes to that? What?
Yeah, for sure. And the partner plays such a big role because what I've seen in my clients is it either can delay the process or it can speed it up. So, for example, if you have a partner who is very worried, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to like finances and stuff, but it's almost unfounded, right? Like they're not actually meeting with the financial planner, they're not doing the things to change their budget, we're not actively moving it forward. Then it's like they always have these questions, and so you want to address the questions as much as possible. And at some point, you might even need to get some coaching or support for your spouse because this is a big change, right? And you both are going to experience the effects of that. But in some cases, our partners actually are so supportive that they help speed up the process. They're like, yes, I can see how this would really help you. My husband was like, great, get out of corporate. He couldn't wait for me to be done because he just wanted his wife back. He's like, you're miserable. You're not happy. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't who I married. So he couldn't wait. And he was like, I will do whatever we have to do. We'll move our family. We'll make all the changes we need to make so that we can make this happen for you and take off the pressure to have a similar income. So that's one of the things. But I think it's really important for partners to know that you can't fix each other.
Thank you.
There is absolutely nothing that my husband could have done when I was going through all of these emotions, all the frustrations. I mean, even though he helped with laundry and he did these other things, and that was supportive. Really, when it came to what I wanted in life, like, he couldn't fix me. There was nothing he could do. I had to come to those realizations myself. So you need a lot of patience. And sometimes you just need to listen and not even go back at them. So what I'll tell people is just hear them out and then say, this is a lot to process. I need some time to think about this. And then I'd love to continue this conversation later when I can formulate my questions in a better way. And so we have to resist the temptation to be like, what do you mean you want to leave your job? What do you mean you want to do this? Or how are we going to pay for that? Or how are we going to, what are you going to do all day? And just allow ourselves to feel all the feels and validate our feelings, but then also have constructive conversations out of that.
Exactly. And then remember to, and this is why in general, for the health of your relationship, it is important to be having those check-ins, those conversations about what is the plan for your family? What is the vision for your family? All right. I mean, and I can look back on my situation and the fact that, I really did have those blinders on. And for a while, I had forgotten that I was part of a larger unit.
Yeah.
As much as he frustrated me at the time and I was very resentful and angry about it, my husband actually had that long-term vision in mind. So as much as I do not ever want to relive that period of my life. I am very grateful for the fact that he was there to kind of be that stick in the mud and just calm down. Are other things that you can consider that's not handing in your resignation letter tomorrow.
Right. So, yeah, and healthy ways of coping, right? Because I ended up buying a Benz to trap myself in my job because I thought, well, I won't walk in and quit if I have a car payment. How insane is that? It's like the most insane thing ever to do, but that's where my mindset was at. It was like, I'm so desperate that I need something to prevent me from walking in and quitting.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, girl, it was bad.
But Karin is talking about this exiting this life. This was not an easy choice at all. This was not an easy decision. I mean, I know,
but the best decision.
Well, this is what I was now going to come back to. Yes. So not easy, but the best one, because you know what? At that time, it might have been quote unquote easy to stay there, but you would have paid in the price you would have paid for staying under those conditions, working the way you were working. It affected your health. It affected your relationship with your husband, with your kids. I mean, there's this. We have to remember.
And my kids see it big time, because back in the day, it was like they were an annoyance to me. And I feel so terrible even saying that out loud, but I knew it, they knew it, right? Like I remember getting called to school one day because my kid apparently had peed on his shirt. And so they were like, you need to bring him a change of clothes. And I'm like, ugh, seriously? I'm like, just stick him under the hand dryer. He'll be fine. So they make me come. I go home, I get clothes. Well, they called the wrong kid down. because my kids look similar. They got the names mixed up, whatever. So I give the kid who did not pee on himself a pair of clothes. And he's like, I didn't even do this. Well, and I'm like, I don't know. They made me leave work for this. Just put these dang clothes on and whatever. And so I leave, go back, and I'm all angry working from home the rest of the day because, the commute was long and all that. And it was like these little things. And that's the experience of me that they got every day. Get ready. We got to go. I'm going to be late for a meeting. It was always stress. It was always this. This is what they saw of me. Yep. Hold on one second. Yep. Me in my phone, responding to work, to emails. And now it's mom dropping them off every morning for school. It's mom making them a hot breakfast. It's mom picking them up from school. It's mom at their sports game, not missing the goal because she was checking her emails. And, it's just such a different experience. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It's really been the best for me. And that might not be the best thing for someone else. That's why I still have my business, because I do still want that work. I still do have that mission that is bigger than me and bigger than my family that I want to fulfill. But yeah, I need something that is flexible. I will never, ever be employed by someone that has demands on my time, because I need the full flexibility. I'm going to work how and when I want to work.
All right. So we have talked about this piece. Actually, I think we've covered it, because it's that idea of, your tips for couples going through this transition. But I mean, we've touched on the things like the check-ins, the listening, the actual listening, the empathy.
Yeah.
Understanding where your partner is coming from. Like, you have your own inner turmoil. That's not easy to describe to someone else.
Yeah, and you really do need to make sure that each partner is working through that, not only together, but then also sometimes separately. And it's been a really interesting turn of events because my husband has now been talking about starting his own business. And I found myself initially like, whoa, buddy, no, there's only room for one entrepreneur in this house. What do you mean you're not going to have a steady paycheck? What do you mean you're not going to have, right? So, and then I was like, whoa, settle down. Like, let's realize what his dreams and aspirations are. Like, let's come at this from a different perspective. So I had to drink my own champagne a little bit there for a minute, but it just paints the picture that we're all human, right? And we all have these deep-seated thoughts and beliefs. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be poor. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to have this. Or, and we create these stories in our head. And so if we don't deal with those stories, and sometimes that means getting outside support, a coach, someone like myself, right, who can walk you through this process and give you exercises and tips and tools to address those things and mitigate them and break through them.
Okay. Now, let's take it maybe through a different lens for a moment.
Sure.
So for the woman who has decided, my family is a priority, my marriage is a priority, but I also want to succeed at my career. I want to succeed in my professional life without sacrificing. So she's kind of looking at the flip side now.
Yeah.
How do I grow in my corporate life, but not sacrifice what I view as my role as a mother?
Yeah, sure. And so what I have seen in a majority of my clients is that we put pressure on ourselves. Many times it's not actually the organization saying you have to be on 24/7. It's not the organization saying you have to do all these extra projects. It's us and our own ambitions. And we are compensating because many of us also work in male-dominated fields. And so we feel like we have to outperform or overperform in order to just be on equal status with the men in our organization. And so a lot of the women that I work with, I have to remind them, like, what is your job description? What do you actually need to do to perform in this role? Let's do that and nothing else. Let's just focus on performing and being an A player. We don't need to be an A plus kill ourselves player, right? And I had one lady, wow, she is such a boss. One of my clients, I adore this woman. She's like, my company doesn't even pay me that much. She's like, they get 4 hours a day from me. And the other 4 hours, I focus on stuff for me and my books and I'm like, I love you. Yes. because we're not paid for the amount of hours that we work. And that is a big mindset shift, because what happens when you're working, when you make $600,000 or compared to when you made $150,000? You're
Yeah.
not being paid to work harder and more hours. What happens when you start making a million, 2 million? You only still have the same 24 hours in a day. You're
Yeah.
paid for your strategy, for how you delegate, for how you set the vision, for how you get your team to deliver on results. It doesn't mean you have to be working 24/7. So you can still grow in your career and set boundaries and work an 8-hour day. And you have to become part of the culture change. If you don't want that to be the culture, you either have to find a culture that doesn't require that, or you have to start pushing back and getting
Yeah.
other people to shift in the organization and say, we're not going to treat our people like this. We're not going to do this anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And also, be honest with yourself. It's like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
working 8 hours, but what am I doing within those 8 hours?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what can I get done in 6 hours? Am I really actually putting 6 hardcore hours in? And if that's the case, well, then put your 6 hardcore hours in, and then
Yeah.
do your other things for the other time.
Exactly. And time block, that's just a practical tip that anybody can start using. And I'm amazed at how many executive females still aren't doing this. They're not putting holds in their calendar. And so they're sitting on back to back meetings from 8 till 5 or 6 at night. And then, yeah, no wonder you're working at night, because you have to do all of your work in the evening when your calls are done. But if you can be more strategic about it and start putting those holds in your calendar and shifting things around, then you've got time to actually do your working and your brain power during the day. And so you don't have to be doing that then in the evening. The other thing I want to just say here too is around really understanding your priorities and your goals. And so I had one client, she's in corporate, she's staying in corporate, she has no desire to leave, but she wanted the balance and things that we've been talking about. And so in the beginning, we were talking about values, and she mentioned her relationship, and I'm like, that's great. I'm like, okay, now let's look at your top 5 goals. What are your top 5 goals in life right now? And she gives me the goals, and none of them are her relationship. And I'm like, wait a second, honey. I was like, this is why things are struggling in the marriage department, because you don't even have a relationship goal.
Yeah.
So how can you improve something and make it a good piece of your life when you don't have a goal around it? And so that was one of the things that we got to work on. And so now I'm happy to report that she's got a wonderful marriage. They're thriving. They're getting stronger and stronger as a family unit all the time. And it's really beautiful to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And as you said, and it sounds like common sense, but in practice, and you know what, even for people who this is a piece of advice that they give, sometimes we forget too. I mean, it's the time blocking is useful. As Karin said, what are your top 5 priorities? Does your calendar reflect that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even your email, even your browser history, does your browser history reflect that?
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they don't, are these really your top 5 goals? And if these are what you want to be your top 5 goals, well, then you got to do some reshuffling of priorities and actions.
Yeah. And I've never had anyone say, my top priority is to hang out on TikTok scrolling until 2 a.m. And yet you would be amazed how many women are staying up to get some decompressed time, a little downtime, and they end up scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, for hours in the evening.
Yes.
Such a time suck, not helping you achieve your God-given purpose or your mission in life.
No.
So it's setting those boundaries, right? Sometimes it's a digital detox and, deleting the apps from our phones and only checking it once in a while on desktop. I mean, there's so many little things that it just depends on the person, their goals, what they're trying to achieve. Then we can create a custom plan specifically for that person.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, just on that note,
I feel called out. I'm sorry.
No. Well, it's funny because last night my husband was trying to watch a video one of my brothers-in-law sent, and he was like, oh fine, I'll just open the TikTok app so I can see it. So he downloaded the TikTok, re-downloaded it because he had taken it off a couple of years ago, and he watched the video, and then an hour and a half later, I'm like, I kind of turned in my sleep. I'm like, are you seriously still on that? He's like, I know it's bad. So this morning, the first thing he did was deleted it again. He's like, no, we're not going back down that rabbit hole.
No.
So it's crazy. Anyway, you talked about, these ladies figuring out the right steps for themselves. Okay. So Whereas we are going to close up with your last piece of advice for them, I want to draw everyone's attention. You have something called the career compass. So, can you tell us about the career compass? Right.
This is so beautiful. This is a 40-page document that is going to help you figure out your next savvy, empowered career move. We're going to take all the emotion out of it, at least until the end, give you a really objective way to outline your priorities, your values. Think outside the box a little bit about what criteria is most important to you, outline your options, give you some methods for scoring and weighing your criteria so that you can really objectively look at what opportunity or career move would be best suited to be totally soul aligned to you and what you want. And then we show you how to analyze it a little bit further and actually make a plan to move forward. So yeah, you can go to karenfreeland.com/career-compass to get it. And then be on the lookout because in October, I'm going to be doing a 5-day workshop on this called The Power of the Pivot. And we're going to show you how to make those empowered career moves. So if you want to come hang out with me live, just like this for 5 days, we'd love to have you.
Lovely. So where can we find you?
Yeah, KarenFreeland.com is a great place. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Karin Freeland there. You can connect with me. Let me know that you saw the show, and I'd be grateful to accept your connection request and listen to my podcast. So those of you that love podcasts, Rock Your Reinvention comes out every Thursday, new episode. So come check it out, and we'll help you walk this journey and make the moves that you need to make to have a richer, fuller life.
Beautiful. And on our last note, what's the last thing you want to tell ladies who are listening right now and feel stuck professionally?
Call me. No, I'm just kidding. I want you. Do that, but also really follow your heart. You were given an intuition. That is such a female genius. You know, that is part of our feminine genius. And so we need to tap into it when the world around us is telling us, no, you're too emotional. You know, you're too sensitive. No, you're too this, you're too that. You're not. You're perfect. And you know in your heart when you're not happy. So go ahead and follow it because you were given this desire for a reason.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Karin, for
You're
your
so welcome.
All right. So check out karenfreeland.com and catch up with Karin and get more of her hot tips and strategies.
Thank you.
This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it.